Hello, It Depends listeners. This is your host, Kevin Goldsmith, and I'm here to let you know that the following episode is an encore episode. That means it's a repeat. I'm sharing it while I'm on vacation. I will be back in a few weeks with some new episodes. Until then, I hope you enjoy these blasts from the past. Thanks so much for listening. Hello, and welcome to the It Depends podcast. My name is Kevin Goldsmith. I am your host. I'm a CTO and advisor, board member to companies, and I'm the author of It Depends, Writing on Technology Leadership 2012 to 2022. And this podcast, if this is your first time, in this podcast, we serialize the audiobook of It Depends with some extra content around the chapter, a bit more director's cut, if you will. In addition to the podcast, there's also a newsletter. The newsletter, also called It Depends. The newsletter is serializing the text of the book, but it's serializing the text of the book out of order. This podcast is serializing the book in order, so you can actually subscribe to both, and you don't get the same content every week or every other week because the newsletter is on alternate weeks from the podcast. If you've bought the book, thank you. Always thank you to everyone who's bought the book. If you haven't bought the book, but you're finding value in the podcast, please consider it. You can buy it in lots of bookstores all over the world. There's links to all of them and all the audiobook locations as well from the website, which is itdependsbook.net. So go there. If you're interested in getting more details, there's a chapter list. There's some kind words that others have said about it. If you've read the book and enjoyed the book or listened to it and enjoyed it, please rate it. Please put a review wherever you got it. That would really help me out. Not a huge marketing campaign behind this, so I'm really counting on word of mouth to make people aware of it. If you have questions or comments, please email me, contact@itdependsbook.net. If you do and you're asking a question, I thank you for those who have reached out for one reason or another. If you have a question and it's okay for me to answer it either in this podcast or in the newsletter, please let me know. And also please let me know if it's okay to use your name. This week's chapter is chapter 13 of the book, Protecting Your Team from Layoffs. I wrote this originally in 2014. And at the time, we weren't going through a bigger exercise where there were a lot of layoffs happening. Now, as I speak this 10 years later, 2024, we've had multiple rounds of these kind of bigger things, corrections that the industry does. And by the way, somebody who's been in the industry working full-time in software since 1992, I can tell you, we do this, right? We grow super big, and then there's some kind of economic correction, and all of a sudden all the companies start laying off. It absolutely sucks. I was absolutely affected one of these times, the .com explosion of 2000, 2001. I left my really secure gig at Microsoft, went to a startup, went under, did a new startup. That startup, we were never able to find funding. So, was unemployed for a period of time there. So I absolutely know what it's like. For those of you who are going through it, absolutely my full support and understanding. It sucks very much. And hopefully you'll all find a job soon. For those of you who are currently at companies, this chapter is really meant for managers, But, for you as an individual, I think there's also some good advice in here as well about making sure that your work is visible. And that's kind of the central tenet of this chapter is making your work visible and known. And it's very easy to think that your work stands on its own, that the inherent quality and value you bring to your team or to the company is obvious to those around you. But in reality, that's unfortunately never the case, or very, very rarely, because there's a lot of people in your team, in your company, and they're all doing work. And certainly your manager sees your work and hopefully recognizes the value you bring, but their manager is responsible for a lot more people. They may see it, they may acknowledge it, they may tell you, hey, I noticed you did this, that's great. That's a good thing. It means either your manager is communicating up or the director or VP is actually interested in asking and looking for what's going on. But it really comes down to if you're an individual and you want to make sure that you're put in a good place or your work is recognized, especially if your company goes through one of these layoff exercises. Make sure that the good work you do, don't take credit for others' work. That's the last chapter we talked about was politics. That's politics. Don't take credit for others' work. Don't try and pretend mediocre or not great work is good work. Kind of try and make it sound like the stuff you're doing is more important than it is. Make sure that to the best of your abilities, you're working on the stuff that is relevant to the company and important. And then when you do a good job on something, make sure there's an opportunity for you to share that and to make it known that you did this great work. And there's lots of ways to do that. Some of them I talk about in the chapter, like giving internal tech talks or writing, if your company has internal blog pages, writing something there, or looking for an opportunity to demo the work that you did, just to make it visible beyond your immediate team, though, that this is something valuable and that you were the person responsible. Having that in the mind of a person who's going to have to make a decision and they're looking at a large group of people, they're being told you have to lay off 10% of your organization. They're going to look at these names that are in front of them, and they're going to try and remember something about each person. And you want them to know who you are and have a good understanding. Oh, yeah, this person does good work. If you're a manager, which is really the context of the chapter, it's very similar. One thing that I want you to pay attention to when you're listening to what I wrote is nowhere in here do I talk about how you as a manager get more visible. Everything I talk about is making the members of your team more visible, making their work known. That is important to protect your team, which is really what this chapter is about. But also, it is important for you. If you're worried, maybe I'll get laid off because maybe I should be taking more credit for my team's work. That may work a little bit. That's not going to work for very long. And eventually people will just know you as the person who takes credit for their team's work. And that kind of makes you a jerk, not a good leader or talented leader. Also, if your team is doing good work and the work of your team is recognized, that you have done a good job. I talk about performance management. I talk about hiring. Hiring's part of this, hiring good people, doing good performance management, making the work of the team and the team members visible. that absolutely reflects very positively on you. If your team is known for doing good work and the members of your team are known for being good at what they do, that makes you as their manager look very good because you're the one who's hired these people and you're the one who's helping them grow and you're the one who's making sure that the team is focused on the right things. So it's very tempting, especially if you're nervous, and a lot of folks are these days because companies you would never think of as laying off people are laying off people. And even the companies that folks often think of as like the safe places to go in these kind of environments, the big companies, the FANGs, they're laying people off too, thousands. So a lot of people are very nervous and rightfully so right now, and very understandably. So you may want to really focus on yourself at the to the detriment of your team. But honestly, that's going to be counterproductive. That's going to make you look worse. So don't do it. I wrote this chapter 10 years ago, and I've learned a lot since. Obviously, it's been an important 10 years in my career. I included this chapter in the book because rereading it, the advice I think is still absolutely valid. I think by the time I had the job that I was talking about, and it was a company that nearly every year would lay off a substantial percentage of the company. It was just what they did. They grew by acquisition and would end up with too many people as they approached the end of the year and the next budgeting cycle, and then would right size the company for the coming year. And so a lot of good people, a lot of my friends over the years got hit in the layoffs. And having been at that company for years and then kind of gotten to this position of managing a pretty big engineering team before I got promoted to director and then was running a larger organization, I had seen what had happened and I paid attention to which teams were affected in these layoffs and learned those lessons. And that is what's reflected in this chapter. Looking back again over these 10 years, the advice still holds. It's no guarantee. And I don't say in the chapter, if you do this, you will never have to lay anybody off. No, companies get into financial trouble, end up in a place and then have to do it. And sometimes it's going to happen and you don't really have any control about it and you can do whatever you can, but it's still going to affect your team. But this advice that I give is still pretty good as a way of doing your best to guard against it and to protect the people that work for you. This advice is really given from the perspective of a much bigger company. In a smaller company, it's a lot easier for people to recognize the value that an individual brings, especially if your company is like a startup or one of these smaller organizations where you have less than Dunbar's number 150. Pretty much everybody is kind of visible there, but it's still important to make everyone's work visible, especially if you have really well-balanced teams where you have very senior people in the team and mid-career folks and early career folks. The senior folks tend to, because they're more experienced, because they tend to work on bigger projects, they tend to get all the attention. And also they're probably much better known within the company. They're asked to demo, they're asked to present. They have a lot more opportunities for visibility. An important part of this, if you have these well-balanced teams, is to make sure that those folks who are doing good work, the early career folks who are just exceeding your expectations, or the mid-career folks who really delivered on something and did a great job, making sure they get that attention too. Because again, that is really important, not only for their own career development and being able to promote them at some point, being able to justify raises for them. It's also important if times go bad and there's this person who's been doing great work, and you want to make sure that they're not included in the layoff, but no one else knows about the work. And so now it's trying to save them and having to argue, but no one knows much about this person. So that's another reason to make sure those folks in your team are visible as well. And so now, please enjoy Chapter 13 of It Depends, Protecting Your Team from Layoffs. Protecting Your Team from Layoffs, originally published on October 3rd, 2014. It's that time of year again when my inbox and social media feeds fill with the news of former coworkers who got caught in my old company's yearly layoff exercise. I'd like to say that I was lucky that in 8 years as a manager there, I didn't have to lay off anyone, but it was a lot of very hard work. So for my former colleagues or any manager, here are some tips to help you keep your team visible and vital in a large company. It was never a matter of just the groups or individuals doing a poor job that would get hit. It was the teams and individuals who weren't visible beyond their immediate peers. If management doesn't know who you are or why what you do is important, they are far less likely to keep you around. Stay focused on company priorities. Senior management, hopefully, is making the company priorities clear. Unfortunately, an anti-pattern I have often seen is to ignore those messages because it will just shift again. I'm working on the critical stuff. This attitude is willfully ignoring that clear prioritization message. It is equivalent to saying that you are smarter than your company's senior leadership. This may be true, but I guarantee that they'll have much more insight into the competitive landscape than you do. Ignoring them is not only lousy self-preservation, but it is also disrespectful. As a leader, you must always ensure that your team works on items relevant to the company's priorities. This doesn't mean you should completely pivot every time priorities change, but you should adapt your team's mission to support those priorities. Keep your team and team members visible. It has been said that the best way to promote yourself as a manager is to hire people more intelligent than you and support them as best as you can. This is true in my experience. If you have smart people, ensure they are visible in the larger organization. Give them public kudos for work well done and opportunities to demonstrate their brilliance, like internal tech talks or blog posts. The visibility of bright individuals has a halo effect on the team, especially if there are multiple bright folks on the team. At layoff time, your team will be too awesome to mess with. Building a bright team also reflects well on you as their manager. I want to make one thing clear, however. Visibility isn't about people tooting their own horn over mediocre accomplishments. It is about doing good work and then talking about it. Intelligence without application is valueless. Do something extraordinarily aligned with the company goals and then talk about it. Share the knowledge and share the lessons with others. I call this taking a victory lap. Manage out low performers. This advice may seem counterintuitive in a layoff-prone company. For example, you might think you should keep your low performers around if you may someday need to lay someone off. But unfortunately, this is incorrect on multiple levels. First, it is a jerk move. If you have folks struggling in your environment or culture, you aren't doing them any favors by keeping them around as cannon fodder. If they are a bad fit and haven't improved with all manner of coaching and mentoring, help them find a better role. It is the best thing you can do for them. Second, they bring the rest of the team down. The rest of your team may be great, but those low performers will be a drag on the whole team, performance and morale-wise. Poor performers give you and your team a negative vibe, just like high-performing folks give you a positive one. When it comes time for senior management to cut people, having known poor performers makes you a target. Instead, build a reputation for raising the level of your worst performers or managing out the ones you can't help. Actively managing your team will help you inoculate your employees from a layoff. When senior management decides to lay off, it may not just be your lowest performers that are affected. Better to protect the whole team and do the right thing for people who would be happier elsewhere. Manage up. This guidance may sound political or calculating, but it isn't meant that way. When I say manage up, I mean actively communicating with your manager and soliciting help or feedback when needed. Your manager is busy. They're probably unaware of what is happening in every team in their organization. If you have great performers in your team, tell your boss when they accomplish something noteworthy. If you have folks with issues, let your boss know what you are doing to help them. Let your boss know how you align your team's goals with the company and its goals. Then get feedback. What could you be doing better? Is there something you are missing strategically? By nature of their place in the organization, they have more visibility into what is happening across the company. Take advantage of that. Knowing more about your team and its capabilities will be necessary when a senior leader looks across their organization to decide where to make some tough cuts. These techniques aren't just for protecting the team from layoffs. Hopefully, these tips shouldn't seem only like good ways to manage against layoffs, but like good strategies for managing, period. You should always recognize top performers for their work, raise the level, or manage out low performers, align with the company's priorities, and make sure your boss knows what is going on. That wasn't too long of a chapter, but hopefully I thought it had, a good information to words ratio, more signal, less noise. Hopefully you agree. If you have friends who are managers or folks within your company and you think this advice is good, you can please share this podcast with them. This is one of the chapters that has already been serialized in the newsletter. So you can also find, if you'd rather share the text of it. And for those of you who don't read the newsletter, there's less backstory in the newsletter. I kind of say that for the podcast. The newsletter has certainly stuff around the chapter, but if you're looking for a more succinct way to just share the content of that chapter, and I've already put it in the newsletter, you can reference that. Or of course, you can get the book or share your copy of the book or convince them to buy the book. In any case, if you want to find that newsletter and share that instead of sharing the podcast, you can go to kevingoldsmith.substack.com, which is where the newsletter lives. You can also get to that from the itdependsbook.net website. It's linked there too, obviously. And in the list of articles from the newsletter, you can find the how to protect your team from layoffs. So that's another way. If you found this useful and you want to share it with friends within your company or to other companies, that's a good way to do it. I will see you again in a couple weeks here on the podcast. I will see you next week on the newsletter. And I want to give a plug. I'm giving a talk this fall at the Leading Eng conference in New York City in September. My talk is about the director to CTO path, how to walk it or how to mentor it. I've spoken at the various lead dev and Leading Eng events over many years now. I love the White October people. They're awesome. They put on great conferences. And so I'm really excited to be speaking once again in New York and to speak once again at one of their Leading Eng conferences. So you can find tickets for that from the Lead Dev website, leaddev.com, if you're interested. And if so, I'll see you there, and I'll have office hours at the conference as well. So you can, ask me questions to my face. So I'll hopefully see you there. Or if you can't wait that long, please send me your questions at contact@itdependsbook.net. Thanks again. See you soon. Thanks so much for listening. Please, again, subscribe, rate, share episodes of this podcast on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for Answers to April for the music used in this podcast. To hear more from Answers to April, visit answerstoapril.com. This podcast is a production of Unit Circle Media.